Now tell me, if somebody makes a proposition that India is a democracy and it should do everything to protect its democracy, is it true or false? Is it something that we can value, we can talk about it, or we reject it completely as false? No, it's not false. We all know India is a democracy. We all recognize that democracy needs to be protected. That men and women are equal, true or false? Of course, true. They are equal. Why not? Everybody has universal human rights, right? Now, what about the Vedantic thing that there is only one Brahman? That is the only truth. The rest of it, yeah, it's not so important. That's what we say. So how do you say that? How can you combine both? That is the challenge. I'll start the page again. So if you are taking that Paramartha Tattva, Ekam Eva Advitiyam Neha Nanasti Kinchana, there is no second, everything is one. Then what about physics? What about Newton's laws of motion? What about engineering you have studied? What about medicine? All this will become false. The purpose of Advaita Vedanta is not to reject this whole samsara, the phenomenal reality, the truths, all as false, and only Advaita, that Brahman is true, everything else is false. No, that is not the idea. What they are trying to say is that there are three layers of truth. In Buddhism, there are two layers of truth. In Advaita Vedanta, they are saying there is one Paramarthika Satya. And there is a Vyavaharika Satya, there is a Pratibhasika Satya. Pratibhasika reality is what is you observe in your dreams. That is relevant to you only when you are in a dream state. The moment you wake up, that's no more true for you. Similarly, when we are seeing a snake on a rope, it's a rope, we think it's a snake. That is again a Pratibhasika, one apparent reality, a phenomenal reality. In case of apparent reality, we can say that there was an involvement of faulty cognition. In case of Vyavaharika Vastavata, phenomenal reality, you can intersubjectively verify the truth. This is a physics book, that is a chemistry book. This is verifiable. This is a man, that's a woman, that's verifiable. There is no confusion whatsoever. And yet, the ultimate truth, the only truth we all agree, as per our Shastras and with all the arguments that we have, that ultimately there is only one truth. And what is that? The only one truth is ultimately that Paramartha Vastu is Atma. All other things, yeah, these are appearances. So we are having an analytical framework in which we do not reject different truths that we encounter through experience, through logic, through analysis. We accept one thing. Then how do you explain why multiplicity becomes a reality for us? How do you make sense of the samsara after you study Advaita Vedanta, which says only Paramartha Tattva, that Atma Vastu, that alone is real. Everything else is unreal. How can you say that? Okay, they give you a very good way to explain it away, saying there is an ultimate reality which is ultimately true, which is undeniably true. The phenomenal reality is true, but it becomes deniable from a higher perspective. That is the only difference. That is what he was trying to explain. And what is the text saying? The text is saying this, that look at the text now, in the page number 64, Vikalpa tad abhavabhyam. So Vikalpa and Vikalpa's abhav. What are you talking about? The Brahman is Savikalpa or Nirvikalpa? What kind of thing you are talking about? If you establish it, we have already discussed it. If you say Savikalpaka, then whatever you verify becomes Paramarthataha Mithya, because there is an alternative. If it is Nirvikalpa, why are we discussing this? We started with that the means of establishing our understanding of Brahman is not through direct statements of Vedas or Upanishads, but through an analytical process. What is that analytical process? It's called Lakshana Vritti. there is a denotative truth. Like, for example, you say 1 is a natural number. Straightforward, isn't it? But you say Tattva Masi, you are that, you are Brahman. It's not easy. It's not a straightforward sentence. The meaning doesn't become obvious to us. Why? 1 is Jiva. Limited time on earth, limited powers, limited, everything is limited. It's for a few seconds. You have a little money and you have a house, you have a location and everything like that. Brahman, everything is unlimited. How can you be Brahman? Then he's saying, no, I'm not trying to equate you in a literal sense, but in a connotative sense where essentially we're equating the pure consciousness, which is hiding in you, which is not visible, but it's there all the time, undeniably. And the Brahman also same. There are 2 upadhis, 2 branding labels. One is Jiva, the other one is Ishvara. That is Maya Upahita Chaitanya. This is Avidya Upahita Chaitanya. Chaitanya nevertheless. Pure consciousness. Same one consciousness has become this whole samsara. The Vichitra Srishti that we see is an unfoldment. What kind of unfoldment? Real, unreal. The Vaishnavas will explain to us it's a, Parinamavada, Brahma Parinamavada. The Brahman has become everything. Ramanujacharya would say. Other Dvaitavadis will say God has created this whole samsara. Advaita Vedanta says it's Vivarta Parinamavada. This is a kind of a projection. What kind of a projection? You see, you have sunlight and you have water, the rainwater. You see the rainbow. The rainwater becomes a rainbow. It appears as a rainbow. The occurrence of the rainbow is real almost to the eyes. However, they remain water. The rainwater remains water. And because of an interaction between the sunlight and these rainwater, you have studied in physics as to why that light now gets scattered and you see all 7 colors and you see a rainbow. Similarly, the samsara appears as real because of the location of our whole perception. Where are we located? We are located not in Delhi or Bhubaneswar or London or anything. We are located in avidya. Our perspective is kind of drowned in ignorance, is smothered, is colored with a certain caste. What is that caste? That is called avidya. And when you can remove that caste, then it becomes, again, Swayam Prakasha, which is the nature of our Chaitanya. Everything will vanish. That is only perfect thing that remains. That is Atma only. That is how the Shastrakara, the author, is holding our hands and moving us towards that conclusion through an elaborate process of pedagogy where he's explaining it step by step. It's very interesting. So he's saying, Vikalpatat abhavabhyam vikalpena vikalpa abhavena cha asansprushta atma vastuni. The Atma, neither there is vikalpa nor there is vikalpa bhava. In the rope, neither there is a snake nor there is absence of a snake. If there is a pen is not there, you say the pen is not there. The snake was never there. It is just a superimposition. What do you mean by abhava of snake? A lot of mental problems people have, and they have hallucinations. They have delusions. There will be no other person talking about them. Then they have an hallucination that somebody was looking at that person. No such person was there. And he would say he was here, but now he isn't there. Neither he was here or not there. It's just a creation of your mind. This is a hallucination. That is what is hitting it. Sansparsha rahite paramatma vastuni. That atma vastu is sansparsha rahita. Interestingly, that is why adhyasa is of different kinds. We'll take it up as we move forward. One is swarupa adhyasa, then sansarga adhyasa. In Brahman, we have some kind of a sansarga adhyasa. There is no sparsha, there is no relationship. We impose relationships. To give an everyday example, let's imagine it like this, that there was a girl whose marriage was fixed with a guy. Some arranged marriage, older days. And then that guy gets married elsewhere. The boy's father and the girl's father, they are childhood friends. So from childhood onwards, these kids grew up thinking one day they're going to get married. When the guy finds a job and he goes somewhere, the girl chooses somebody, some other area, and she realizes it's not compatible. He realizes they go their own ways. There is a adhyasa, however. They are visited. So that continues. There is no relationship whatsoever. Then there is sansarga adhyasa. This guy was supposed to be my husband. He was not. I mean, this was an imagination. Similarly, Brahman, there is a sansarga adhyasa. That's what he's saying. Paramatma vastuni vikalpa tattva lakshyatva. Vikalpa tattva and lakshyatva. That this is what you are discussing. Lakshana vritya tattvamashyadi vakyavihi. You are trying to reach there. So what he was trying to say, when you have a lakshana vritti, there is a lakshya. If there is a lakshya, means a particular destination. There is a point of reference. You are trying to understand it. That's a lakshya. What would be there in it? There will be lakshyata. Okay? Because that is the nature of that word, lakshyata. Then what is it? There is a defining feature of that. That is a dharma. Lakshyata, avashyedakta, something you can attribute. This kind of an attribution in Brahman makes it sabikalpa. It's not nirvikalpa. There is some attribute associated with it. Then how can it be ekameva advitiyam? That is the debate we are following. What he's trying to say is neither there is any vikalpa, not tadabhava. No attribute, any attributes, presence or absence, sorry. It's beyond all relationships. Then he's saying, Tatra vikalpi tattvam nama sabikalpasya va nirvikalpasya va iti pruvoktina vishekru tattvam. We have already discussed. I don't want to revisit it. You can go back and listen to the lecture. Lakshyatvam lakshana vritya gyapatvam tattvamasi gangayam ghoshaha. There is a house on the Ganges. There is no such house. It's on the banks of the Ganges. So through this lakshana vritti, when you have jala pravahatvam, then you are referring to the banks of the Ganges, and there could be a stable house located there. Lakshana vritya gyapakatvam, gyapyatvam. That is what you are conveying. That is lakshyatvam. Sambandha sanyogadi. What is sambandha? What is the relationship in Nyaya logic? So these two fingers are joining. This is sanyoga sambandha. These fingers are there. And what is the relationship between these fingers and this palm? They will say there is a samavaya sambandha. Avayava, avayavi sambandha. This is a avayavi. These are avayavas. The avayava will stay in the avayavas in a samavaya sambandha. What is samavaya sambandha? The relationship of inherence. Part and whole relationship. Guna guni sambandha. This palm is brownish. The brown color stays in this hand through a relationship of inherence. Guna drabya sambandha. Now these fingers are moving. This kriya, this karma will stay in this dravya. This is an object in samavaya sambandha, relationship of inherence. These are logical language of the Nyayikas. So he's trying to say these Nyayikas will attack Advaita Vedanta again and again. There was always a debate between the Nyayikas, the Buddhists, Nyayikas and Advaita Vedantis. Because both Buddhists and Advaita Vedantis are talking about two truths, and ultimately they call it Shunya, we call it Brahman. But there is some kind of a similarity because we are talking about non-duality. Non-dualism is there in Buddhism, also in Advaita Vedanta. And all of the schools of thought, especially the Nyayikas, they are Dvaitavadis because they accept this whole sansara is real, phenomenal real. Even the scientists will fight with the Advaita Vedantis because this whole mechanical perception is this moving world, and all the laws of physics and chemistry will become nonsensical if they accept Advaita Vedanta. Nevertheless, they are smarter physicists who are now having a bit of positive curiosity about Vedanta from the perspective of quantum physics. Samandha sayogadihi. Sayoga adi means samavayadi. Adi sabdena dravyadaya grihanti. You have the saptapadarthas. All these are categories of reality. True or false. The Vedanti will say, I'm not saying they are false. I'm saying ultimately not true. These are categories. You use them. In every day, we have to use these categories. We cannot have a conversation. If we accept that only Brahman is real, what about these computers through which I'm connecting with you and you are listening to me and there is a network? These are false or true? These are true. Then why are we all the time talking about Brahman? No, we are talking about something fundamental. We're talking about something fundamental. The fundamental is one. These are, this is how the diversity has emerged, both in physics, also in Advaita Vedanta. So, Krama Vetiriktatva, now there are certain lakshanas or definitions from Nyaya language is taken. Samavai karanam dravyam itiva. Now, guna will stay in guni or dravya in samavaya samandha. So, samavai karanam dravyam. Dravyam is guna asriyatvam or samavai karanam. The guna, the cause is dravya. It's an inherent cause of that quality. There's a girl who is very beautiful. Okay, the physical body of that woman or girl is the samavaya karana, inherent cause of the beauty that you perceive. That beauty stays in her in a relationship of inherence. Goodness of a person is inherent in you. Goodness is inherent in you. So it's a relationship of inherence. The qualities stay in the dravya in a relationship of inherence. Similarly, Tarkikaihi Lakshitam, the Nyayikas, logicians, philosophical logic it's called. Karma Vyatiraktatve Sati Jati Matra Ashrayo Gunaha. There is another such sentence of the Nyayikas. What does that mean? You see, the karma and guna, both are in samavaya samandha in dravya. If I move the hand, this movement is staying in this hand in samavaya samandha. And the color of this hand, the shape of this hand, these are all attributes. They are also staying in this hand in samavaya samandha. Jati matra ashrayo gunaha. Jati is what? A category, a class of things. Okay. Now, guna cannot stay in guna as per Nyayikas. Goodness cannot stay in goodness. Goodness can stay or inherit in a human being. Somebody is good. Good cannot be good. Goodness cannot stay in goodness. Goodness will be in a person, right? Because goodness is an attribute which is attributable, or we can associate that with a certain person. Beauty cannot stay in beauty. Guna cannot stay in guna. Beauty cannot stay in guna. Beauty can stay in a flower, in a plant, in a picture, in a painting, in a design, because these are qualities. They would be in dravyas. Clear? So in that sense, he's saying, karma vyatiriktatve sati. Why? Because in a dravya, you have jati, class of things. Like a manushya is there, a human being. Manushyatva, that is there. Gotva, jati, cowness. Cowness is one. Okay. So what is that he's saying? Nityam ekam aneka vrittihi. Gotva, cowness is there in all the cows. So, nityatva sati aneka anugatatvam. It's nitya. Cowness is eternal, but it is there in all of them. You know why the Vedanti gets a little irritated beyond a point? He says, all my boys, you are very smart. You are giving us a lot of philosophical definition. But I don't agree with you that cowness is nitya, eternal. Sorry. What about pralaya kala? How? They say, no, cowness continues. Cows may perish. What about cowness? It stays there. You know, it will remind you of the Platonic ideal types. Very interesting. A lot of people get impressed because they are very sophisticated thinkers. Well, Advaita Vedanti is saying, I grant you your space provided you accept that these are intermediate categories. These are not the ultimate truth. Then we don't have any conflict. But there would be a conflict because for them that alone is the ultimate truth. So he's saying, Aneka vritti samanyam, there is samanya and vishesha. Now vishesha is what? Which is itara vavartakatvam, which separates one from another. Like you have helium and hydrogen. And then all these qualities, like gold and silver, if you take it to the atomic level, what distinguishes gold from silver? They will say that vishesha is there, nitya dravya vritti. They have their own way of defining it. We are not going to veer too much into Nyaya philosophy. Sanyoga viyoga or asamavai karana jatiyam karma iti lakshita kriya. So, for example, there is a stone starts moving. How it started moving? Because you threw it. There is a karma, you threw it. So there is a missile. Somebody fires it, then it moves at a certain speed. If it's hypersonic, it moves at a high speed. So you have some karma. Then there is a certain kriya, there is certain tvarana, there is acceleration, all that. Sanyoga Viyoga, and there was this missile was fitted to the launch machine, and that is launched. Missile launcher is there. The Sanyoga was there, now it's Viyoga. It what do you call it? It departs from there. Right? There's a departure. It escapes from here. So Sanyoga Viyoga, Asamvaya Karana Jatiyam Karma iti Lakshita Kriya. So these are all definitions. What moves something in motion or stops something which is in motion? Some kind of action. So all these kind of definitions, you waste a lot of your intellectual time trying to categorize different activities, different realities, and you have a philosophical debate. What the Advaita Vedanta is saying, that I got no problem. So far as you don't question the Upanishadic insight that everything is ultimately one. For Nyayika, they also talk about liberation, by the way. For them, moksha is also there. They also want mukti. How do they get mukti? They think that through a proper philosophical analysis, when you have a better understanding of reality, you will have dukkha nibriti. You shall not be in pain because you will have a good understanding. Very much Platonic, because he said, know thyself. You know the reality, right? They say, Rite Jnanam na Kaivalyam. The Advaita Vedantis. They also, the Nyayikas also say, these categories we are giving you for a more appropriate understanding of samsara. And therefore, you should not be confused. You will have more clear thinking. And you know, this is going to lead to, dukkha nibriti. That doesn't happen. Dukkha nibriti is not atmajnana. That is not ultimate ananda. That is not the Advaita Vedanta, because you can take some intoxicants and you can remove all your pain. That's not liberation. Anyway, we are not going there right now. Ete sarve swarupe kalpita eva ityartha. These are all imaginary categories. What do you mean by imaginary? Tucha? No. Kalpita means projected. These are projections. It's like there are three alternative models of a certain big building you want to establish, a big infrastructure facility you want to establish. And you have 3-4 architects, and they present their architectural plans, 3D architectural plans. Sometimes they come with objective presentations, isn't it? They come with models. You go to any big buildings on the first floor, ground floor, when you enter, the model will be there in a corner. That is actually shared with the guy who actually built that structure prior to that came into existence. They retain it for reference, and other people get curious, isn't it? So if you say go to, I think it's Yichang in China, and there is a huge world's biggest dam, Three Gorges Dam, and it's an engineering marvel. They, sort of generate 20,000 megawatts from one hydroelectricity facility. And if you go there, there's a huge museum where they'll show you that this is how it was constructed, and they'll show the whole design, because you cannot have enough of it through your naked eyes by being on a cruise or anything. You don't get the whole hang of it. You don't get a feel of it. So if you go to that museum, they prepare a design. Is that real or unreal? Is that the dam? No. But you love to see it because you also click pictures standing next to it. Why so? That gives you a certain understanding of what that dam is all about. Similarly, all these philosophical categories the Nyayikas use and other people use, very relevant. That doesn't make those categories ultimately real. They are projections of reality. They are about projections of reality, and there is nothing perfectly true or false about them. These are all superimpositions. Done. Now, what have we achieved till now? We started with Jiva Brahmayor Ekatvam. Jiva and Brahma is one. All of us are one. We are doing this satsang. All of us are one and single thing. Satsang, how is it happening? That is what is Vyavaharika Satya, the phenomenal reality. Ultimately, all of us are one. All of us are part of that one pure consciousness. Some are listening, some other people are doing several things. All of us are kind of decentered, fragmented, isolated from each other. Ultimately, we are part of one grand reality called the Brahman. Call that infinite spread of consciousness, which is self-aware and luminous. It gives you a lot of imagination even to think about this reality. It's not easy, but he's saying that is the ultimate truth. How do we reach there? If it is such a grand thing, how is it possible for us to reach there? So it starts with listening to the truth. So what is the pedagogical method now? The pedagogy or the method of instruction or teaching is called Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. There are 3 phases until you have Atma Sakshatkara or self-realization. And let's look at that, the verse number 53 now. Etavata Grantha Sandarbhena Kim Uktam Bhavati Iti Akankhayam Phalitam Aha. So we have already finished about 52 slokas in the first chapter. Title Tattva Viveka, making sense of what is that perfect truth. How do you reach there? So you remember we have to do a bit of forward and backward linkage to make sense of it. First, let's do Ucharanam of the verse number 53. Itam Vakyais Tadarthanu Sandhanam Shravanam Bhavet Yuktya Sambhavitatvanu Sandhanam Mananam Tutat. Shravana is listening. It's Artha Grahana, making sense of what you read. It's just a lexiconic reception. Artha Grahana is mentioning. You'll understand the sentences, what is meant. That's not all. When we get into the lecture halls as students, and a new concept is kind of introduced to us, he explains perfectly all that. We listen to it. Ittam Vakyaihi, Ittam Kim, this particular Atma Tattva, we are trying to realize something about that Atma Tattva. Vakyai, how do you know this? Tattvamasi, Ayam Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. These are the Mahavakyas. Certain very powerful, insightful statements available in the Upanishads. These Upanishadic statements are there before you. They don't mean anything to you. So you would be looking at a few commentaries or attending a few classes, or you would have interactions with people who will explain to you, as per the tradition, how do we make sense of these sentences. Vakyehi tad artha anusandhanam. Tad artha. What is that tad? That is that Brahma. What is the meaning of that? Tad artha anusandhanam. Tad artha anusandhanam. You are, in order to explore the meaning of these insightful statements about that tat, that Brahman, the ultimate reality, you want to explore it. You want to search for it. That anusandhana, that exploration is called Shravanam Bhavet. Shravana is not listening. He's elevated the meaning of Shravana to a higher plane. Okay? So that is the key thing. Shravana now is not through your sensory organ of hearing. You hear the sentences and you're trying to infer what is stated. That not alone is sufficient to be defined as Shravana. Here, Shravana means Artha Grahana. About what? About Atma, that is Shravana. You listen to film songs is not Shravana, is for Vedanta. Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana is very specific and focused on that Atma Tattva. Listening to anything is not Shravana. Listening to and about that Atma Tattva from the mouths of the Guru. There's a lot of discussions in the in the Vedantic circles as to what exactly it is. And there's a lot of definition. Different schools of thought will tell you different things. If you want me to sort of mention uh, a few things about Shravana in a very simple, if you want, very brief kind of thing, then Shravana will be, you have your Shastra and you have your Acharya. You have a certain text. In JNU now, they have a Shastra group. They are looking at different traditional, and now there is a lot of to and fro and a back and forth, some debates going on. Reading of manuscripts. Certain people say there is no critical thinking. Why to read manuscripts? I'm a little amused because, in fact, even during our times in JNU, it was mandatory for you to pick up one chapter from. We also had one chapter from Plato, one chapter from Thomas Hobbes, Leviathan, one chapter from Prince of Machiavelli. This was mandatory reading in MA classes. I'm sure in different subjects, like for example in sociology, they'll make you read one chapter from Levi-Strauss or Durkheim or Max Weber. That is reading of manuscripts. But reading of Sanskrit manuscripts will take you back. Why so? A lot of smart guys in the West who have been reading manuscripts. We had something called archaeology. We have something called history. There is a study of old coins, numismatics. There are a lot of sciences. It's nothing to be frightened of. Critical thinking doesn't develop because you avoid manuscripts. It develops because you critically read manuscripts. Why should you be opposed to it? Anyway, that's a different debate. So Shravana is what? Sastya Acharya Upadeshena Brahmanaha Akhandarthasya Grahanam Shravanam. This is one of the ways in which it's defined by mostly people from this Vidyaranya tradition. Panchadashi is one of the texts in that Vidyaranya tradition of Advaita Vedanta. From the mouths of the Acharya, a certain propounder, the exponent of the Vedantic explanations of the Upanishadic texts, he explains. So you have this traditional, pedagogy. So you listen to it carefully. And this is not something which is non-corporeal in technical terms. It's a living tradition. The teacher teaches and you hear it, number one. Number two, you don't hear it like a student. You enroll in a PhD, in an MA program or something, or MTech program and attend classes. No. He keeps an eye on all aspects of your life. He looks at your eligibility. So you have to maintain brahmacharya, you have to live in an ashram, and then there are defined food consumption code. They'll throw you out if they see that you're smoking and consuming alcohol. No, sorry, not part of the Vedantic tradition. So there are some rules and regulations, and it's a very holistic. It sort of touches upon all aspects of your life. And they say, what are the things that you should do? What are the things you cannot do? If you stay in an ashram to study Vedanta and they say you are flirting with somebody, they will say, okay, this is not for you. Why don't you leave this place? No need to come here from tomorrow onwards. Yeah, Vedanta has become more fashionable, so you have all kinds of things going on. But truth of the matter is that he has to see, are you sadhana chatushtaya sampanna? Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhamadi, Satka Sampatti, Mumukshitva. All these qualities are in you. So this is a very holistic thing, all encompassing. Then you are listening to the text from the mouth of the Acharya. Then you are doing Artha Grahana, that is called Shravana. Okay? And what they say, Sisyaha Gurumukhat Vedanta Vakyani Shunoti. The Shishya will listen to what the Vedantic teacher tells. And then Tesham Vakyanam Tattvarya Vishayaha Lakshana Vakyartha Siddhihi Mahavakya Vishayabodha. So you see, that Tattva, that Atma, what does it mean? That Abobodha has to happen to you. So you make sense of them. Artha Grahana means what does it mean? Bhagavad Gita, a lot of people listen and chant and stuff like that. But how do we interpret it? You see that there's a word called yati, yatati, This word comes again and again. Mat paraha, those who are focused on me. And the Acharya needs to know in what context this has been said. Who is a yati? The one who is trying to make efforts to strive towards that unification with the ultimate truth. The Atma Tattva is a yati. Yatna Shilaha, Purushaha is yati. So you need to know the context in which this is, because Sanskrit is a multi-significant language. One word can have 20 meanings. So you need to put it in right context in which you will elaborate and receive the meaning of it. Therefore, Shravana is a very significant stepping stone towards getting the meaning of it. So then what is Manana? And what is Manana he's trying to say in the next thing? Jagataha itham jagataha upadanam ityadi jagataha yad upadanam. In the verse number 44, if you see, that has been explained. What is Vedanta Panchadashi? I have to go there. Yeah. So the verse number 44, you remember? Jagato yad upadanam mayam adaya tamasim nimittam suddha sattvam tam uchyate brahma tadgira. Tadgira, through these words. Jagataha yad upadanam. What is the inherent material cause of the sansara? Mayam adaya tamasim. You have this maya. Looking at that tamasi, if you take that, we have already discussed that. If you go back to one of the lectures, you can find it. Nimittam suddha sattvam tam uchyate brahma tadagira. Then you have this upadana and nimitta karana is Ishvara. Maya is the material cause. That is as per the Vidyaranya school of thought. And Ishvara is the nimitta karana. Is abhinna nimitta upadana karana. We have already discussed it. Like a spider, out of its own saliva, it spins the net to trap the fly. Sansara is created by God, not with any external material, because there is nothing beyond him. He is sarva vidyaman. What material can stay outside of him which will use to create the sansara? Unlike in other faiths. So this is how is mentioning the verse number 44. Therefore, he is saying, Jagataha yad upadanam, verse number 44. Pra means prakarana, first one, chapter. Ityadi grantha jata ukta prakarena vakyehi. There are several such sentences we are mentioning in the Panchadashi grantha and also in the Upanishad. Tattvamasyadi vakyehi. Tattvamasi, you are that. In the Chandogya Upanishad. Vakyehi tadartha anusandhanam. Tat atmartha anusandhanam. You have to search for the meaning of Atma. Tattvamasi se Atma ka gyan kaise hoga? How do I get a hang of what is the nature of myself from that statement? You are that. Right? Can you advise me? I want to know about Atma. Yes. How do I know? Tattvamasi, you are that. The student is doubly confused. I am that. Why did I come to you? Am I liberated? Of course you are liberated. Why should I be sitting here to know that? I don't know that I am a very intelligent guy. Okay, if that be so, then why should you be so confused in life? The dialogue starts. So he's saying, Tadartha anusandhanam tesham vakyanam arthasya. What is the meaning of those sentences? Vakyanam arthasya. What is it? What is that artha? Jiva brahmanor ekatva lakshanasya anusandhanam. Vedanta is about nothing except one thing, that all of us are one. People will say unity amidst diversity. Advaita Vedanta says unity is the only truth. There is no diversity. Diversity is only apparent. It's a projection. It's conceptual. It's superimposed. The only truth is all of us are one, and that is the only truth. Jiva brahmanor ekatva lakshanasya anusandhanam. Lakshana vritya tattvamasi. There's a long process. Those of you are more interested, you can look at that book, Vedanta Sara. We have done it. The links are there. In the same thing, you will find Vedanta Sara classes. So, anusandhanam shravanam bhave. That is what is shravana. means inferring what is the meaning of this word Tattvamasi. There are so many Mahavakyas. Okay? And what about Manana? You would have a very pertinent question to ask. What about Manana, sir? You tell me what is Manana. Manana, what they will say, Manana is Sansya Utthapanam Tasya cha Yuktya Nirasanam Mananam. You see, if somebody gives you, you remember geometry, right, in school, there'd be a certain, what is called, there's a certain theorem. You study that in trigonometry and this and that. You might doubt it with some intermediate level of expertise you have in the subject. You might say, how is it possible? Then the teacher comes into the class and explains to you, he elaborates, he mentions the steps and proves the theorem to you. There are certain theorems which might appear to be a little, a little confusing or contradictory. And there are so many other people who have said so many things, but about natural sciences, one thing is interesting. At the initial, even up to middle levels, there are no confusions. Everybody has an agreement on the basic premises and conclusions. Not so in Vedanta or in philosophy, because people have fundamental disagreements. Therefore, when you say, you use the word God, somebody might have 20 ideas about what is a God. You absolutely have no clue what it means. What do you mean by God? You have no clear meaning. It can mean anything. Is a transcendental God? It's an immanent God. Is God in all of us? No, He's watching us from the top. He's transcendent God. So all these kinds of things makes it far more challenging than in case of, let's say, let me just switch off the phone. There's some call. Give me 1 second. So what I was trying to explain is that whether it's a transcendental God or it's a immanent God, what do you mean by that? Is he having names and forms? Does he have a physical presence? Does he look like a human being? Does he look like a plant? Or he just pure consciousness? How do we make sense of it? There are so many views. Like Tattvamasi, somebody says, Jiva and Brahman is one. There is no separateness. There is no distinction. These are all superimposed, not fundamentally real. Somebody will tell you that. But the Dvaitavadi says that Brahman, Bhakta and Bhagavan cannot be one. If there is a Bhakta, there should be a Bhagavan who is different from you. And then we don't want liberation. The Sankara kind of liberation is very confusing, this arrogant. You're saying, Aham Brahmasmi. Who told you all this? This is basically egoistic thing. You tell a Christian, Aham Brahmasmi, he'll slap you. You tell that to a Muslim, you tell that to a Vaishnava, they'll slap you. They say that this guy is thoroughly arrogant and confused. He's trying to equate himself with the Supreme Lord. Lord of the universe, who the hell are you? They don't understand what was intended there. They are trying to literally equate, they think this equation is a literal equation, therefore they get angry. So many views are there. Therefore, when somebody says you are God, you are the Brahman, you will have a few doubts. You have already understood, by the way, through Shravana. Arthagrahana has happened. The conclusion is something you have heard, you have understood. But still there's a long way to go because you have a lot of sansaya. A lot of doubts come into your minds. Really? Is that so? I'm living a life. And all this whole Dvaita Prapancha, and somebody says everything is one. How is that possible? That doesn't look very logical. It's not very plausible. Then you do mananam. You try to logically prove to yourself, no, the meaning of Tattvamasi is this, and it has no internal logical contradictions. You'll try to make sense of it. Through mananam, you will do sansaya nirasanam, refutation of the doubts which creep into your consciousness. It's an everyday story, and so many films in our everyday lives, isn't it? Even people who are married for 20 years can have a fight. Because of what? Because of doubt. Because of unnecessary projection of their own ignorance and prejudices onto their husband and wife. They can have a quarrel. Brothers and sisters have quarrels. Much of it is based on a faulty understanding. And then somebody says, oh, really? So you think he doesn't love you? Then why he did this? Why he did that? Why he did that? Somebody counsels that wife. Or someone counsels that husband. Then they realize, because essentially in a moment of rage or confusion, you give shelter to misunderstanding. When you are properly counseled, your mind becomes clearer, you see the picture from a larger perspective, you understand your mistake. Vedanta, what he's trying to say is, through manana, you'll remove these faulty prejudices that you harbor in your mind because of a limited or naive way of accepting it. Therefore, mugging up what is being told to you by all, you just have to have faith. Faith alone shall liberate you. Never ask questions. Blindly accept. Vedanta doesn't accept this method. Vedanta says that you have to do mananam. You have to analyze, look at the alternative interpretations and what creates doubts and confusions in your minds. Then you should be in a position to refute them. The Bhaktivadis will say, that only through love you reach there. You don't need all that. This is for intellectuals. They're wasting their times. That's what a devotee will tell you. But it's not so simple. Even Christianity says, to love God, you need to know God. Why do you have theology in all schools, whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or Islam or Hinduism? Why the Vaishnavas also have so many shastras? Why? What does they need? If there's no room for any analytical thinking, if there is no room for vichara, you need to have that vicharana. That's why they also have a Shastra Parampara. Why do you have so many theological argumentations? Because it's important. So manana is sansaya nirasanam, removing all kinds of doubts which emerge in you. Remember, asambhavana, sansaya, and a viparita bhavana. Viparita bhavana is, first is, you have a sangsaya. How is it possible? Whatever is available to my eyes, all these are false. Brahman, which I cannot see, is real. Huh? What a tall order. And then you have asambhavana. It's not possible. Viparita bhavana, no. This alone is real. Exactly opposite. So how they explain that manana, you remove sansaya nirasanam. Will not go further. Just accept this much. Then what is nididhyasana? That will be the next sloka. Nididhyasana is that, what happens? In case of mental problem, it happens. So what happens? Somebody has severe psychotic problems, or you have neurotic problems. You have severe depression. There is paranoia, or there's anxiety or something. And then he goes to a counselor, or goes to a well-wisher. He nicely explains to him, no, you have not lost anything. The relationship broke. That doesn't mean you have become inferior or you are rejected. It's a relationship. It's a certain presumption. It's a certain thing which was happening to you, around you. There's nothing to do with you, by the way. You got so many less marks. That's not an evaluation of who you are. It's about an examination. So there's a proper coaching. Everything happens. Then what happens? That boy or girl who was in a relationship, or who has, messed up his previous examination, he's in a state of depression, right? Then goes home. He loves the counselor. The counselor gives him or her a hug and love and affection and everything. And then the counselor helps that particular student, that person, reorient his consciousness and his understanding. He goes back. Then what happens? After 3-4 days, somebody makes a snide remark. Or he or she, because of what trigger, something relapses into his mind. He's watching a film and there is a song. And this girl says, I wish the world was more honest. Why did I at all believe a liar to my friend, my well-wisher? Shame on me. Some song. These are the lyrics. What happens to that girl? Who had recovered from that trauma goes back into that trauma. A student who had come out of that depression that he didn't do very well in the examination had recovered. Then he read the newspaper. One boy runs away from home after screwing up the examination, goes back to that trauma. It's called a relapse, right? So sometimes we have relapse of a certain, it's called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You have intrusive thoughts. There are so many issues. You have a disaster, there's this story. So there was a flood and somebody had lost his old mother and other kids in Kane and comes back to that house. He is living in the US and suddenly he opens his box and suddenly he gets his school certificate. And there is mud stain on that school certificate. Then he's suddenly reminded of the floods. After 35 years, gets traumatized. He suddenly misses that point. Oh my God, my mother had got swept away in that flood. Everything comes back, right? These are called disaster souvenirs. They come back and reignite a lot of past, which are traumatic, difficult to deal with. Why am I mentioning all this? This happens in the life of a Vedantic sadhaka. It happens in the life of all of us. So we try to be spiritual. We reorient our consciousness and we sit and do everything. And then one phone call, there is a relapse. It goes back to that default mode. So what is the way forward? What you understand from Shravana and through Sansaya Nirashana, still not stable. How do you strengthen that understanding, that conviction? You have to do Nididhyasana. And what does it mean? It's like self-hypnosis. It's like a constant meditation on that theme, that idea. So you are reprogramming your consciousness in layman's language. So when you try to reprogram your consciousness, that is what is Nididhyasana. So how do you put it? So in Vidyaranya Bhashya, he says, so what he says at that moment is Dhyana Rupam Sadhanam. Okay? So that is how you try to sort of establish. How does it happen that dhyana is what? Tatrekatanata. You know, there are so many examples and similes which are given to make this point. Let's look at the sloka itself because that is so beautifully explained. If we look at the sloka. So we have already done it, but I am revisiting it. Ityadi grantha jatokta prakarena vakyaihi tattvamashyadi vakyaihi tadarthanusadhanam tesham vakyanam arthasya jibba brahmanor ekatva lakshanasya anusandhanam shravanam bhaved. This we have already done. This is what is shravana. Then yuktya, through logic. Sabda sparshadayo vedyaha. We have done this, verse number 3. Sabda, this I have just jotted down on the left side. Sabda sparshadayo vedya vaichitya jagare prathaga tato vibhakta tat sambit ekarupyat na vidyate. Jagrat avastha, you are seeing all these are, but the Chaitanya, that is actually one only. During the dream state, during the deep sleep state, we have already done it. The verse number 3, you can go back. Ityadina paraparatmanor evam yuktya sambhavite kata. This is verse number 43. This also I've just noted down here. Paraparatmanor evam yuktya sambhavite kata. Tattvamasya vakyesa bhagatyagena lakshyati. We have just done it a little before, the 43rd verse. Para and aparatmanoho evam yuktya. Apara Brahma is Jiva, Param Brahma, Ishvara, the Brahman, Yuktya sambhaviti kata. How do you say? How can Jiva be Brahma? Through proper analytical understanding and elaboration. We are referring to consciousness as one. We are not referring to the Jiva and Ishvara as one. Tattvamasyadi vakyehi. How do I understand it? By making sense of Tattvamasi Mahavakya. Sa, that particular thing. What is that? That particular ekata, sa ekata, jiva brahmanor ekata, that oneness, bhagatyagena lakhyate, bhagatyaga lakshanaya, or jahada ajahada lakshanaya, so ayam devadatta. Little boy is this man with two children and a wife. How come that little boy have a wife? Sorry, remove that contradictory aspects and attributes. The consciousness, the identity is the son of X or Y, and then he studied, and all that remains the same. The details you forget, which are contradictory. Okay, this is how the manana and shravana you understand. Shravana and manana, then you will go forward into the next verse, which is a 1 minute. So I think we'll postpone it for tomorrow because we just have reached the timeline. There's not a problem. We'll just focus on nididhyasana and we'll progress further tomorrow. Let's do the Santi mantras, and if you have any question, you can ask after that. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hare Om Tat Sat. Okay, so any questions? I have switched off the YouTube, so any questions you can feel free to ask. Any question, any doubts? Yeah, please.
Maybe this part of Panchadashi, as we are discussing, is more Naya philosophic, right? More logic driven.
Yes. Yeah. So
Uh,
this will be, yeah, please go ahead.
so basically, as we know, we have told earlier that Shankaracharya mostly in Advaita philosophy. Why there is this more? Why there is a diversion? Like Naya philosophy is more towards Sankhya kind of thing.
You see, what
Uh,
happens is Panchadasi text was written in about 15th century, where the Vaishnava school of thought and the Nyaya school of thought had gained prominence, and Indian philosophy had progressed much further than what it was during Shankaracharya's time. During Shankaracharya's time, mostly it was Advaita Vedanta, and you had Sankhya Darshana, and you had Yoga Darshana. But during another about 700-800 years, you had many sophisticated philosophical schools emerged which challenged the non-dualism of Advaita Vedanta. And therefore, the Advaita Vedantists had to answer them. That is how the Panchadasikara would take up a lot of arguments of different schools of thought and then make the Advaita perspective clearer. That is the idea. This
so
is
based
not
on the logical, yes,
so
based on the
this,
logical,
this, this is not a blind acceptance of Advaita Vedanta, nor is it a submission and acceptance of the Nyaya view. It is a dialogical process where there would be argumentation and counter argumentation with Advaita Vedanta being re-established as the foundational truth.
okay, okay. So
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so
So we will, as we go further, many such questions and counter questions will come and they will be refuted. So we will again meet tomorrow and take it forward. Have a good weekend. See you tomorrow.
Pranam.